The third event of our discussion club. This time it will be in English, and we will keep switching between languages based on the speakers we have. So I hope it's fine. We had a lot of international community registered, so I hope you're here and enjoying. And while preparing, I was looking for new ways to explain the idea of the discussion club. And the more I was reading, the more I came to the conclusion that it should have been named not Vilnius University Discussion Club, but the Dialogue Club. Because in the world we have a lot of discussions that are pre-organized, and both of the speakers know exactly what are they going to say, and they just state their minds, they don't listen to the opponent, and they just kind of both end up sticking with their minds. What we are trying to do here is to create space for the dialogue. The topic of the event is not important itself. We had various ones and we have a lot of upcoming planned, but the topic is not important. The important part is experiencing the complexity of the dialogue between speakers and questioning your own mind, understanding yourself, which sometimes it's only possible when having a good listener. And I guess we'll come up to that conclusion during our talk on love as well. So tonight we're talking about love. And I'm really nervous because I don't know where it will go. And I was thinking, why is that? And one of the reasons is that in Lithuanian and both in English, we only have one word describing love. And it's too big of a concept to be described by only one word. In ancient Greece, there is eros, which describes the erotic love between two beloved ones. There is philia, which describes love between friends and values and more like love for the idea, for the science. And then there's agape, which is love in the broader sense, in the theology and unconditional love. So then it's easier to talk about it. And for the beginning, I will at first try to describe what are we talking about, what is this? But tonight we have Professor Ramunė Grikšienė, which is a neuroscientist from Life Sciences Center. Then we have Professor Celestine de Munck, which is the anthropologist from Faculty of Philosophy. Then we have Associate Professor Vytautas Jurkuvėnas, which is psychologist and psychology scientist in the Institute of Psychology. And we have also Dr. Vytenis Šumskas, which is a mathematician from Faculty of Mathematics and Informatics. And he has also something to say about love. So we can start by our speakers introducing ourselves really briefly. So Ramunė, you can start if you can turn this on. Oh, I'm sorry, Vytautas, you start, yeah. And then the joystick is there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Vytautas Jurkuvėnas, from Faculty of Philosophy and the Institute of Psychology. And I actually teach cognitive psychology in university mostly. Also, I work as a therapist. I do psychodynamic therapy, and so these are different jobs. I also do research, but also do practical work, just have patients for a few days in a week or so. So I have these two sides. But actually, I don't do research on love. It's not my main topic. We talked I do actually my research right now is mostly conspiracy theories, fake news, and things like that. So I don't know, maybe that's also related somehow. But anyway, so what I decided to talk for these few minutes that I have right now for introduction is the psychological view, I guess. I tried to pick a few theories from psychology just to maybe tell you what psychologists think love is, maybe, but there's so many theories in psychology about love, actually. It's like psychology, like thinkers in psychology and researchers done a lot of work here. So I just picked a few. I'm not saying these are the main or necessarily the most important theories, but some that I hope that maybe you have heard the names maybe in your introductory psychology classes or something like that. So at least Maslow's pyramid you have heard of, I hope. So the first idea that I wanted to say from us psychologists, I represent them now, I guess, so is that love is a need and that it is somewhere in between. The need which is somewhere in between our psychological, physiological needs like breathing, water, and so on, and like these self-actualization needs, the spiritual needs, and things like that. And it is somewhere in between, and maybe, just maybe, this is why we have problems with it. Like we're not sure, is it physiological or is it like self-actualization? And sometimes, I guess, we get in trouble. That's what thinkers thought. The next important author in psychology that often comes to mind when we talk about love is Erich Fromm and his famous book, Love as an Art. If you haven't read it, read it. And basically, his basic idea is that you shouldn't concentrate on finding the right person, and that love is a capacity. He talks about, like, I don't know, about mostly his theories, and this book was written mostly by just talking to his patients and to his just listening to their problems, and he like developed this a bit like pop psychology maybe book, but I guess it is a very important idea. And the last idea that I want to present from psychologists, and this one is more empirically based, actually, is the so-called attachment theory. And attachment theory, it basically comes from looking the theory was developed after the war, actually, when like Bowlby, the author, he saw many children and later adults who received food, shelter, and so on, but they didn't receive love. There was not enough time for people to take care of them, and they developed a lot of emotional and psychological problems. And that's why we say in psychology there's a lot of research done why we need this love, but we are going to talk about like this consistent love that is long-term love and caring and so on, that it's something which is very healthy to us in some way and that we need in our lives. It's a very important need that we want to have. And I guess saving time, I'll maybe talk more about that later in our discussion. Yeah.
Okay. Hello to everyone, and let's switch to my slides. And I am happy to be here and to present the Life Science Center here. As I was presented, probably I'm a neuroscientist, neurobiologist, and lead the hormones and brain functions group in our center. So we do not investigate love as well as Vytautas said, but I guess, I know about love not more than you all know here, but I know a little bit about brain and hormones and how they interact and all these neurochemicals, what they do for us as a human. And at least I can say some neurobiological perspectives or views and share them with you about love. And this is picture from this weekend, and I just found this nice sculpture, or how to call it, and I thought it's very nice to show it here. It's in the context of this presentation. So from the neurobiological perspective, by listening to Vytautas, I was thinking that my perspective fits very well with what you just said, that love is related, is based on needs and attachment. So biology says the same. We have needs, which is related to motivations and need to be rewarded. And when we are together with somebody and we feel pleasure being with somebody, that rewards us. And that, because of this, our brain produces dopamine. Our brainstem releases dopamine, and that creates this nice feeling which we seek to keep it longer and to have it again and again. So oxytocin and vasopressin is another interesting couple of neuroactive materials produced also by our brain in hypothalamus. And these neurochemicals, hormones, are related to the attachment, to the strength of attachment between. Oxytocin is related during birth giving, and it is responsible first of all for the contraction of uterus. And because of this, birth can happen. But in addition, the surge of oxytocin, it causes very strong and close relationship between mother and baby. And it is even strengthened during lactation, because during lactation, oxytocin is released again. And again, it strengthens relationship between mother and baby. And also oxytocin and vasopressin, they are released then we perceive romantic love, and they strengthen our attention between partners. And also they are related not only between mother and baby, between partners, but also I think oxytocin and vasopressin, they can explain our broader love to our country, love to our team, love to our university, because they connect us to our environment and where we feel good. And also they are responsible for this feeling of fighting for our country, fighting for our ideas which we believe. They are involved into this. And the next bioactive material which I have here is a cortisol. Yeva just mentioned that she feels stress here, being here and discussing love. And love is related to stress, and this, especially during the first part, initial part of love, which is, if we think on the romantic love, which is desire. And during this first beginning of this relationship, we are continuously on the stress level, and cortisol is always high. Later, this level of stress reduces, and we start to be more calm, more safe, and then it's nice that cortisol reduces. But this increase of cortisol, it also causes the decrease of serotonin in our brain, and this reduction of serotonin make us crazy. And we behave like having obsessive-compulsive disorder, not like normal people. We might seek for the crazy, strange relationship or behave somehow. Our higher brain structures, like cortex, it's not very active during this initial phase of love when we perceive, and our decisions can be strange because of the reduced serotonin and etc. And then hormones from the periphery, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they modulate all these relationships. Increasing estrogen, it might make us more self-confident and more wanting to go and to seek connections. Testosterone is responsible for sexual desire, and progesterone makes us calmer. And one more slide, And one more idea which I wanted to share is about, so these structures and these neurochemicals which I just discussed are very conservative across phylogenesis. They are pretty similar in, as humans, and then drosophiles, and then rodents and primates. So what differs us as humans from other animals? We are animals too, but do we have something different from this, from the perspective of love? And I think that yes, if we look to the brain structures involved in emotions here, but love is related closely to emotions, we have many similar structures, but we have one which is very big in human. It's the prefrontal cortex, our frontal cortex, and very small in animals. So I think specifically this prefrontal cortex makes the difference. Why biology writes the script, but prefrontal cortex, with the decisions which we can make, it direct us toward probably right behavior and right decisions.
Okay, thank you. And then we have mathematicians with their equations to calculate love in a relationship, which sounds absurd at first, but let me try to convince you there is something true to that. So we call it the model of Romeo and Juliet, and let these cats help me explain it to you. So this will be Romeo, and this will be Juliet, okay? And R and J will be their feelings for each other, okay? So let's say Romeo loves Juliet, okay? So then R is a positive number, and the more he loves her, the greater the number is. Now let's say Juliet loves Romeo, so then J is a positive number. If Romeo is mad at Juliet, then R is going to be a negative number, and if Juliet is angry at Romeo, then J is going to be a negative number. All right, so far so good. So next we introduce a couple of parameters in the model. So basically, their feelings can change in time due to these reasons. First, their own tendency to cool down over time. So, it's very natural. Maybe sometimes you need some space to process some intense emotions, some feelings. That's natural. Or maybe if nothing is happening in the relationship, then you just get cold. What is it worth if nothing is happening? All right. So the second reason that is taken into account is the reactivity to the other person's feelings. We will denote it by letters B and C for Romeo and Juliet. So let's say Juliet starts showing some real love for Romeo. Of course, Romeo is going to react somehow. So maybe at first he will like it, he will resonate, or maybe it will be too much for him at some point, and he will need to take a rest from this love, so that he needs to spend some time with himself, reconnect, and then he's ready to come back to the relationship and love again. Okay. So if we include these parameters in the model, so then we get our equations. So these are the equations, differential equations. Of course, they are boring, they are very boring, but they describe the evolution of their feelings in time, so they can help us predict the outcome, or the closeness, or the amount of time they will be with each other happily. Anyways, pictures are a little bit more interesting, so let me illustrate that with some graphs. So I honestly tried to model such a situation where Romeo is avoidant and Juliet is anxious. That's what I got. So where is this laser? We don't have a laser. Anyways, so let's, oh, sweet. Okay, so now let's try to see that in this graph. So let's look at this point. That's the peak of Juliet, or that's the best of Juliet, all right? So she's showing a lot of love, a lot of affection for Romeo, okay? And how is Romeo reacting? He's like, oh no, girl, that's too much. Like, stop texting me every 5 minutes. He needs some space, okay? But then Juliet is being a considerate girlfriend, so she's giving him some space. She is giving less attention to him, which he likes. He's like, oh my God, this girl is becoming nice all of a sudden. It's like she stops asking me what am I thinking every 5 minutes. That's nice, I like her all of a sudden. So Juliet reacts, and her feelings grow. And that turns Romeo off, so the cycle continues like that, on and on. So two important properties for future. Feelings can converge. They can converge to a specific number, let's say. So in this example, they converge to 0. That's not what we want. We want them to converge to some positive number, all right? And another property to keep in mind is the oscillations. So if the oscillations are increasing, that's what we call explosive solution. So basically break up our marriage, okay? And some facts for science nerds. I see there are a couple of science nerds here in this room, okay? So actually we can compute the determinant of this system, and the determinant is equal to A times D minus B times C. And interestingly enough, it determines the outcome of the relationship. The determinant literally determines it. So if it's positive, feelings will decay to 0. If it's negative, that's the explosive solution, you know, marriage or breakup. And if it's around 0, that's the most cases. That's most of us, you know. It has some ups and downs, but it's bounded in some region. So if you are interested by any chance, you can find more in this book. And finally, just to make it clear, mathematicians know that all models are wrong. All, okay? Every model is wrong because we didn't take into account like a million of things. We took into account just a couple of most important. So despite the model being wrong, it's still useful. It can be used to predict the outcome in some cases. So that was my talk. Thank you.
That was really interesting. Not that I followed it well, but that was interesting. Which button do I press to?
Left, right.
Which one?
Left, right? Oh, yeah, that's it. We're done.
Oh, I'm supposed to do that one. Oh, Jesus. Well, let me start. So what I did, a few things I wanted to say at the very beginning. I study love since 1995. And you can give it back to me. Okay, so you press it up here, right?
No.
Talk about this after I talk about what I want to say in the beginning. I think I started studying love in 1995 when I went to a conference and somebody was studying love, and it was the first time I heard of anybody studying love. I think the first time in psychology that somebody did a PhD thesis on love was in 1979, and the person hid his thesis until he got it finally published, until he finally finished his dissertation. And the reason it was hidden was because, at least in the US, love was not a subject of scientific study. So it was a waste of money for NSF or any granting agency to give money for a study of love. In 1992, love became an important thing to study, and that was largely because two anthropologists found love to be a cultural universal, means that you find love everywhere in the world. So that makes it then more than just a cultural thing that one culture has and another culture doesn't, but it makes it something universal, and that must mean that it's psychologically and biologically imprinted in us to construct some feeling of love under certain circumstances. A problem with the idea of love, as we have here, and as we have in most of the literature on love, is that it's not really a noun. Sometimes it's a verb, and sometimes when you're in love, what really needs to be studied more is the relationship of love, how it proceeds, how it progresses, and is there a pattern in the way romantic love proceeds? And certainly romantic love is different than love. And when we say love, we oftentimes think of love as romantic love, but the default of love is not necessarily romantic love. The default could be familial love, or the love of a car for some people, the love of all sorts of things. So the word love is kind of a fantasy word that clouds the actual things. So what I try to do here, and now I'm going to go into this, the last thing I wanted to say is I think love is as difficult to study as the beginning of the universe. They're both complicated things, and we're never going to get there. And I do think that love is completely arbitrary and inarticulable. That is, you cannot articulate how love creates meaning. But I do think that love creates meaning. So, for example, and then I'll try and shut up and go to this. But my example of that is you can be in love with person A, and then I can ask you, why are you in love with person A? Oh, he's so kind, he's wonderful, he's smart, and he's great in bed, and all sorts of other things the person could say. And then I can say, but I have 5 people who are smarter and nicer and kinder than this person. Why do you love this person? And you can't articulate what makes logically, my argument would be that you should go and be with the person who you fit with better. But you don't do that, and you're not moved by my argument at all, and you still love this person. So what is it about love? And the thing that it is that it's inarticulable. You can't articulate it. And it's the inarticulation of meaning that creates meaning. So I see love as the key to unlocking the door of what meaning means. How do things have meaning? And most things don't have meaning until you give them some kind of attention, some kind of affection or something to it, some emotional thing. Okay, so those are my basic things. This, and then I'll be quiet, I think. But what we did was we use these methods that are relatively scientific. By scientific, I mean they're reproducible and you can test them. And those are doing free listing, which is you ask people about what are the words that come to their mind when they think of love. And you get frequency words like trust and kindness and sex and various things. And those tend to be the most frequently used words. Then you ask them to take those words and make them into events. And the events can be seeing your father, the first time you have sex, declaring love to each other. These are the activities that are motivated by love. So love then becomes the mechanism by which these various events that lead to having sex or to getting married or to breaking up, those are all events. And there's a series of events that lead to some kind of end goal, like marriage or having children or divorcing. So what this is that we got 15 terms that are identified with love, the 15 most frequently, most salient terms. And then we ask people to take those terms, which are those terms here, and to put them in an order that they think, a grammatical order for love. And so we found 3 things. A traditional one, which is where love is built up through conversations and meeting the person and knowing the person, and then you go talk to their parents, and then you declare love and have sex at the end of the declaration of love. Then there's a middle one, a transition, which is the one where you can have premarital sex without it being considered a horrible thing to do before marriage. person, they still are someone that you know and care about. The third one is kind of the hookup culture thing, where you front load sex, which means you say hello to the person, and then you have sex that same day or the next day. So there's those three different kinds of ways that love leads to marriage and children, and which is kind of important to study given population collapse. So that was the end of my view.
So, at first, I really don't want to miss this, what I really enjoyed in Vytenis' presentation, that the fluctuation between anxious and avoidant either ends up in the explosion of breakup or the marriage, which are both the negative outcomes. Vytautas, could you elaborate on that? I mean, or is this model then, I mean, you still describe it as not sustainable. So is it true then that in these situations, the breakup is the same, has the same sustainability ratio for the relationship as the marriage in this case? Because you mentioned that the lasting relationship will only end if the equation is around 0.
Yes.
All right.
It's either stable or unstable, you know, so if it's unstable, it can become explosive, and it's equally probable, in a way, that it will explode one or other direction. But if it's stable, if there's at least some level of stability, then at least you can get into some positive region with your feelings. Of course, it always oscillates, it changes, like if it doesn't change, is it even real? Is it even love? Maybe it's dead already. So it's okay to oscillate, but you know, you have to be bounded in some region at least. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So at first, I wanted to start with some broader question on maybe how would you all say, because you all come from very different fields, how would you imagine the evolution of love? Why did it evolve? What's the meaning? If we, okay, I will not. You do that. Why is this needed?
Okay, so I think I can start because I realized when I thought about what I said before that I didn't talk maybe enough about attachment theory. I think this is a very valuable theory to know maybe for everyone. So I think this answers your question from a psychological point of view, of course. So basically attachment theory says that our loving feelings, like how we love other persons, even when we are adults, for example, how we love both in romantic relationships, but cars, of course, and everything else. So it comes from our first relationship with our mothers. And this basic relationship, the relationship that we start when we don't even talk, we can't talk, when we are babies, very small babies, and this relationship with our mother is like the pattern that we follow in all other relationships that we have in our, I don't know, adult lives, teenage lives, and so on. So this is one of the, of course, there's many psychological views, but if we talk about evolution of love, that maybe this could be one of the important answers how we develop loving feelings and the problems that we developed in our loving relationships, meaning we can have like these problematic styles of creating relationships, like anxious styles, insecure styles of creating relationships that could be in our later lives quite a problem. And the patterns that especially it's important to maybe analyze or see the patterns that we repeat in our relationships in our lives, maybe with our romantic partners or our parents and everyone else. So one of the answers, I guess.
Okay, so I would like to say that I think love didn't change a lot during evolution, because I believe that it is made, we perceive love because we need to keep our species alive, right? So we need to reproduce. So it's romantic love, and both love in the family, they both are related to the, keeping our species, right? Securing our species. So, and the biological part of love, it's in the brainstem, all these hormones and neurochemicals, they are very conservative across evolution. They didn't change a lot. They are similar between rodents and us, and between even Drosophils and us. So they are safely conserved and built in our brain, and neither strange relationship, neither mathematicians, neither social media is able to change this very basement of the love. So this is why I believe that it didn't change a lot during evolution and phylogenesis.
Well, I would like to disagree with him briefly. Maybe that makes it more exciting, but I didn't see evolution in your argument. Because the three features of attachment could have been there when Homo erectus was around too. You would have to, as I understand evolution, it's a process of adaptation over a long period of time. And I didn't hear that process. I heard that these are things that are in the mind, so I'm giving it to you to respond.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I would say that how evolution is involved in this, right? So in attachment, in our attachment, for example, to our mothers, it is a basic evolutionary mechanism. It is thought, like, for example, ducks follow the mother duck, and this is the most important attachment that we have, like the survival mechanism without which no one would survive. So this is the basic idea from the evolutionary standpoint in a biological sense.
I would still argue against that, but maybe we shouldn't make this, because you have the other two kinds of attachments haven't gone away. You have three kinds of attachment. One, and I forget what they all are, but one is anxiety. The other one is, what is it? Avoidance is one, but the negative ones haven't gone away. If it was evolution, yes, I get the point.
Yeah, I get the point. So they are also very, they can be, in some instances, they are very valuable. That's the problem. The anxious style is a survival mechanism. It's not like the insecure style is not evolutionarily like inappropriate or bad. It is good, it can be good. It's not, you're not happy to have it, but you're alive.
That doesn't work, because
I kindly ask you to speak to the microphone. We have online listeners, so it's easier for them to hear.
Yeah.
What?
Go ahead, just speak.
Oh, okay. I'm supposed to say something about love right now? Okay, so let me say this. When we talk about love, we're primarily talking about the dyad. No, we're talking about two people, not three people, not four people, not anything else. The default that we're talking about is the dyad. And the dyad, but why is there a dyad, and why is the dyad essentially universal as well? Sure, you have places where you have polygyny, you have multiple wives in some places, polygamy, and you have all sorts of different forms of love. But in almost every, I think in every country, the dyad is the primary form of love. And we need to kind of find out why it's that. And one of the main reasons, and I'm only going to go into one of them now, is that it keeps men, it means that there are more men having children than not. If you have a situation where one man, largely you have this when there's a great wealth disparity between people, and if there's a, like we have now, and one would think that the situation in the US about the Einstein issue is largely a result of rich rich men typically, or powerful men, have a harem or have lots of wives, and that means that there's a lot of men who don't have wives, and they're unmarried men, and they're angry, and they create more, studies have shown that they create more, single men create more problems and more rapes and death and all sorts of destructive things than anyone else. So it's important for societies from an evolutionary point of view to figure out what to do with the problem of men who don't get married. And those unmarried men are very despotic. So the dyad as the primary form of marriage and connecting people keeps the men in a relationship that makes their life worthwhile.
I would still like to elaborate a little bit on the evolutionary effect of different attachment styles. Like you said, that different ones have still the effect. You know, it's still needed. How is that?
Oh, sure. Like, for example, for a baby, let's say for an avoidant baby, he or she develops this style in order to still have a relationship to the mother, to not to be left alone, to still get the love as much as it can get, she, and later in our life, it can be maladaptive. For example, for our happiness, we can do things, avoidant things, like things that seem not rational, like things that are not good for the relationship, but this is something that we learned very early in our lives, in the period of our lives where we didn't think in terms of rationality. And my colleague talked about like these deep structures of our brain and things that are at least implicit. These patterns can be quite implicit for us, and not sometimes we can't even say why we did some things in our previous relationships. You know, if you think about your previous relationships, you can think of things that, why did I do that in my relationship? Well, this is your attachment style, probably speaking.
So we nicely touched the very beginnings of evolution. Ramunė explained that we're not that different from other species, and that love exists also in insects and other animal species, but this is a way different love. And Victor just came up step above in the evolution that, okay, so in our species, we need to evolve more sophisticated style of love in order to maintain, anchor the lonely man, for them not to cause trouble in society. Can we try to understand the very neurobiology of more sophisticated forms of love? I imagine that, okay, we can say that this very essential love feeling is present in insects and in us, but still we have love for God, love for art, love for the country, as you mentioned. Can you try to, all of you, try to understand how did this evolve, or is it not love then?
I think it might be related to the cortex which we have and all memories which we have together. Like, I think it might be based on memory. Love might continue because we do something together what makes us happy and makes us feel good, and we memorize this feeling and we seek to have it together. And this is one perspective. Another, I forget what I wanted to say. Would you like to continue?
I think a lot of this has to do with analogical thinking, and almost all thinking, I think, is, as I understand from Douglas Hofstadter, is analogical. That means that you can reify. There is no such thing as Lithuanian culture, for example. It doesn't exist. Where is it? There is no American culture. There is no culture, period. But it's analogical thinking. So if I'm a Lithuanian and there's my country, I can analogically think of most of the time, if I'm Lithuanian, or whatever I am, I don't think about having a national identity necessarily. So, but I think you can use metaphorically that kind of analogical thinking and turn Lithuania into personification of that you create yourself as kind of a human being, a superorganic being.
I think we're missing one important argument here about evolution. I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we see today, these attachment styles, I mean, all other styles died out in evolution. I mean, these are the styles that survived millions or thousands of years of evolution. I mean, all other strategies, you know, so that's the best that we got, you know.
Definitely. I don't know what else to say. I maybe wanted to also say that from this, like you talked about this more evolutionary, even chemical, like insect love and things like that. I think this is very important. This is something that, of course, we have like this. Like these bonds and these mechanisms in our brain that, for example, are responsible for just satisfaction, for example, just any satisfaction. And these mechanisms do participate from millions of years ago to this day, like the satisfaction that we get is different things and different complexity of things. For example, for an insect, the satisfaction comes from just copulating, like just finding the mate or something like that. For human beings, it can be much more complex things, like these, like things that insects, of course, cannot understand. Even a primate cannot understand what's happening here. You're both reading a book and you're somehow happy. You're having dopamine surges, reading book together. What's that about? Yeah. So the complexity of our love is probably evolved only for like Homo sapiens, like and maybe even culturally, of course. Nothing to do with evolution later.
What is important too, that we are able to behave intentionally regarding we may want to keep that love to continue, right? And then we may know some rules or some behavior which we can implement, wanting intentionally to keep this love for a long time. We may want to touch each other just to increase our desire. We may want to do something together. And again, it's made in our cortex, in our higher brain, which helps us to make these decisions. We regulate our emotions. We do not behave just based on our inner structures impulsively, but we regulate emotions, just not willing to do harm to the person we love. And also we have this, I think it's called positive illusions, right? Then we see only positive things in the person we love, and we somehow are able do not see what we do not like, and we try to do this, and this differs us from animals, lower animals.
So I see the point of love towards evolution as we're willing to die to save our children, or willing to die to save the beloved one. How does it make sense to die for the country when, let's say, the individual doesn't have his personal children? I mean, not that I'm asking for the purpose itself, but how does it work in our brain? Why does it make sense?
I'm not a brain specialist again, but that makes perfect sense to fight for your homeland. I mean, I like people around me. I like culture that we share. I meet my neighbor in the morning. We say skanios kavelės, geros dienelės to each other. I love it, you know. We are a peaceful country. I identify myself with that a lot. I'm ready to fight for that. Makes perfect sense. But about brain, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm all in again, and I guess this is I like the neocortex part. I guess the complexity part of it, like it's our passion, for example, for nationality. Of course, is not something that is purely biological. It's obviously it has a lot of culture in it. There's a lot of like thinking in that done about like what is a country is a cultural invention, right? And so so we have to, in like these, I guess, loving relationships, or even if it's a relationship with your country, we have to think a lot, and it's a complex matter of understanding love. And I think the same goes even for like other relationships, like romantic relationships. For human beings, there's a lot of thinking done there, not only these biological needs and things like that.
I was just thinking, just for discussion, could it be true that if we perceive different important events during our history, like something what excited us, what we know from previous history, what excites us, what relates us somehow to our country, or some harmful things, some exciting things, it might increase our love to our country? So because like we want to be important and to participate in some events and to be somehow related and involved. And if we do not have such events, it might diminish our feeling of love to country. What do you think on that?
Well, one of the things, I forget the name of it, but when you have a really intense relationship, if it's a negative one, it will stay in your head as completely, so that everything that will be recognized. But if it's a positive one, it kind of dissipates, because from an evolutionary point of view, you've got to remember the horrible things that happen to you so you can avoid them, and the good things that happen to you, you can kind of remember, but they don't have the same power to influence your behavior as very negative things that can happen to you, I think. And I think in marriages, I mean, clearly you can love, how do marriages turn sour and really sour? And that's usually in terms of abuse within the marriage system. But if you just have an argument and you're arguing who didn't do the dishes or why didn't you take Johnny to school this week, then those are different kinds of arguments, and those kind of go away unless they build up, I suppose. But I think one of the problems nowadays, and then I'll be quiet about this, is that I think we have, at least my study these days, is that there's three kinds of loves that occur. 4 kinds, no, I'm kidding. Just basically three kinds. But the first one is love where you think the love is forever. So you fall in love with the person, you think it's forever. Forever, of course, is a necessary illusion. That's one of my favorite words. Everything is a necessary illusion. But so you think it goes on forever. Then you can get married, still an illusion. Then you can get kids. If you don't think love goes on forever, and it's contingent, as most postmodern writers write about love, they write about it as being contingent. Liquid love or confluent love by Giddens and Bauman, they talk about it this way. Eva, I forget her last, Illouz wrote a book called The End of Love, So when you're entering relationships now, most of you who are younger than me, which is probably all of you, probably are thinking about love, but you probably don't have the illusion that it'll last forever. You think it may have an expiry date, and you think of it in terms of your individual feelings about how you assess your relationships. But really, love is your individual feelings, but there used to be guidelines in how you went about being in love. So you would talk to your parents and all sorts of other things would happen. And those kind of social aspects of romantic love or of love have kind of failed, so that the individualism is pronounced. And now you can have sex with someone and leave them or ghost them, or you can decide that you just want to get out of the relationship. You don't have to have a moral reason for it. You just need to feel that you want out, and that's enough. So that individualism versus the sense of love that is an individualistic love, but that's confined just to the dyad and not to the rest of the people around who will be critical of you if you divorce. Or so anyway, that's my point.
I'd like to come back to the point where you explained that it stays really long. The negative things we have experienced stays really long in our brain. And connect the Ramunė's thought that previously you were saying that we can't really choose who we love. Like you mentioned that somebody would sit another 4 women and explain that they are technically better, but you would still love the one. How much decision will do we have in falling in love, or how much of it is predicted just by our brain being reorganized by that person? So it's like a virus, you know, like if you fall in love, the neurotransmitters, the hormones that boost up just reinforce this reorganization, and you have little will in how it will go.
Evolve, right? We already have our priorities when we choose. We grow, we are raised by families where we see some examples, and often it's said that girls choose somebody who is similar to her father, or not maybe, or opposite. So I think we learn when we grow, we learn to choose, to learn for our priorities. And then we may think that it's like intuition, which helps us, but intuition is, I believe, it's based on our knowledge, on the context we have in brain. So it might seem accidentally, but maybe we choose already somebody, we fall in love with somebody with whom we would like to fall in love because of our likes, because of our priorities.
Yeah, I guess most of what we do in our lives, the decisions that we make are in a very large part non-conscious, first of all. So it's not like we the conscious part of our decisions is usually extremely small, and even when we think we know why we chose one thing and not another, usually it's not the reason why we chose that, and we don't know the reason why we chose that. So this is the extent of the unconscious processing that we do as human beings, and I guess that's why also choosing a partner, a mate, is usually like we think that we're choosing, and then some people actually try to do that like very deliberately, like they will go to the like apps right now that people use, and they will try to do, I don't know, do a survey or whatever, like do an Excel sheet and charts, pie charts or something like that. but even then, usually there's a lot going on in our unconscious minds that how we will choose the partner or that we will stay with. So yeah, but again, it's like an illusion of choosing more than actual choosing, I guess.
You know, everyone has a type. You know what is saying? Everyone has a type, you know, of girl that he or she likes. You know, I wonder if that really matches our parents' identity, because it seems like it should. But how do you know? You know, you remember nothing from your first 4 years. How do you really know? But I guess we can agree that everyone has a type. Some people have it very strictly, that type. Some have a broader interval, but everyone has some kind of type, right? Right?
So previously you were saying that, would you like to, no?
I do think, and this is controversial, I'm sure, but that men and women have different methods, I'm using the wrong word, but different means to assess the other person. So I think, and I've interviewed maybe 100 Lithuanian women over the last 45, I've been here 5 years, and they're all pretty depressed about their love life, except for very few. And as one put it, I keep setting the bar low, but how low can I set it? But men don't think like that. If a man gets laid, he's happy, I think. So for a man, the decision-making process is so much different than it is for women because of the different goals they have in this relationship. And I think that creates a lot of problems in relationships.
So it's right now quite popular note that women date up and men date down. But how does it work mathematically? I mean, is it even possible to complete a forming society if that would be true?
I mean, why not? We see it everywhere, at least I see it a lot. And it's natural. I mean, maybe you have read the actual article, but I remember reading in some paper about the early evolution of love, like in the, well, that's not ethical, but in monkey societies, like how do they choose the partner? So, and they try to somehow tell something about our evolution of love from the example of monkeys, which can be tricky, but the idea is that our evolution started going really rapid when women started to choose males based on their intellect. And that's where our evolution goes, you know. And meanwhile, men started choosing women based on their physical appearance, which basically predicts the healthiness of children. So that's the point where our evolution started going really rapidly. Maybe that was a good idea. Maybe that's what drives us forward up to this point, and even from now.
But now, since our medicine is getting better, even less healthy women can still deliver. However, with the intellect, there's nothing to be solved there. So it seems like the only possible way out is to keep selecting the more intellectual men.
Yeah. I'm not sure, you know, if evolution is necessarily selecting only for intelligence, but that's probably not the idea. And for many animals, the best evolutionarily performing animals on Earth are like viruses and bacteria. No intelligence, no need. They're mating fine without any brain. But I guess. I don't know, I thought about one statistic that I have heard. There's actually quite a great body of literature on evolutionary psychology and like this theme of dating. And that there are both men and women, there are usually a few men and a few women that date most of the guys and most of other men and other women, and the rest of them date those guys, or gals, who date all of them. And this is usually the distribution of this dating cycle, if you're interested in it. There's quite a few research and these even mathematical models then on that.
So previously we have described that love is only possible if we identify, we mentioned the love for the country, that we have to identify with it to feel love. If the beloved person, country, type of art, anything like that, is part of our identity, what happens if that thing or person vanishes? Does it also is it a death sentence for part of our identity? Yes, let's try that.
Well, no, I wasn't thinking of getting one of these and talking through it. But the dark side of love, of course, I mean, we've all said this in various ways, but love is it's like an atomic bomb in a way. It has a lot of power, and it has a lot of energy that you put into it. And it can't last very long, the romantic type of love, because there's just too much energy that you put into it, and that doesn't last forever. So then you have to figure out another way after that. There's a wonderful story by Stendhal, who makes the argument about crystallization, and I'm sure some of you know about crystallization. And crystallization, for those who don't know, is that Stendhal, who's a French author, he wrote about it's a winterish day. And he goes outside and he sees a twig, a branch. And the branch looks beautiful because all the ice is kind of shining and it looks fantastically beautiful. But under that ice is a dead tree bough. And he says, that's love. The first part is this wonderful sensation of seeing this beautiful crystallization on this stick, and then you get the reality after that. So oftentimes I think love is not good at playing cards, at figuring out, is this really the best person for me or not? It's not necessarily very good at that, though I think most people end up going to places where they meet people of their same kind of moral and political kind of way of being. So you hang out with people who are kind of like you, and choose among them. So that's all I have to say.
My perspective of losing somebody, I think our brain is built for a love. And we wouldn't be able to survive without love. We should love somebody. It could be our country or our partner or children, or I can acquire a dog. But we should love somebody. And when we lose, of course, it should be a very hard period, but then we should restore somehow. We still might have this love in our brain, in our memories, but on the same time, we should try to find another person, or I'm not sure regarding another country, but at least another person whom we could try to love from the beginning again, and to build another new relationship with all parts, with a desire in the beginning, and then maybe we would be able to feel very happy and again.
Let me say one thing quickly about this is, you know, there's two kinds of dark sides. One of them is when the other person leaves you and you're a dyad, and one person leaves you, either they're cheating on you for some bad reason, but it's just one time. I think most people go through the ups and downs more than once if they're at all getting older over time. I mean, you find someone else sometime, but I think the second time is the divorce. The divorce is a whole different time, because then you're not just breaking up with one person, you're breaking up with a family. And that's a very different kind of darkness than the darkness of breaking up with one person, I think, because there's 3 or 4 people that you're also responsible for in that case. So those two things, I think, have to be worked out. In traditional society, I think, because it wasn't so individualistic, it was kind of guided by, well, if you're married, you stay married, unless there's too much abuse going on or too much differences going on, but you stay with the person longer. In an individualistically based society, you can leave pretty quickly. So we have pretty high divorce rates that probably shouldn't be as high as they would if we're talking about what the best end solution here is. The last thing I wanted to say is there's another concept about romantic love. I said there were two. There's the contingent one, and there's the one that's that love lasts forever. There's another one which is called ontological rootedness, which was first talked about by a guy named Simon May, who in 2010 wrote a book, The History of Love, and then in 2020 he wrote another book on the same subject, but just more into it. But he talked about ontological rootedness, which I'm completely into these days. And ontological rootedness is that you're rooted in a relationship, and it's the kind of forever relationship, except it's not just a dyad. It can be more people. It can even be a polyamorous relationship, or it can be any kind of relationship. But by ontological rootedness, he means that you're rooted in that relationship and you're not going to get out of it very easily. And he argues that that's what we're all searching for, an ontologically rooted relationship, kind of like your ideal parent-child relationship.
Yeah. Maybe a little thought about loss. Maybe like you asked if we lose something, like when love relationship ends, like we lose. So I think it's at least from a psychological point of view, it's a process a bit similar to like actually losing a person, I guess. And I always think, especially nowadays, if I can get a bit practical, like talking about relationships, like many people sometimes rush into like going to, I don't know, another partner, or for example in a loving relationship, or even if it's a loss, like, you know, somehow we can be quite quick to want to move on, and we forget that there is this mourning process that we have to go through and let ourselves go through, like this disattachment process. I always put in the attachment theory, as you can see. So we need to disattach and to let ourselves to make a more healthy attachment to another person, and not to rush into these things, because usually, and we know, like we don't need a psychologist to know that, we give this advice to our friends usually, that don't rush into another, like, guy, for example. You broke up with the one today and you want to go into another date, like, don't do that. This is unhealthy. This is something like, it's not a loving relationship. You're just I don't know, doing this out of spite or something. So my few cents, I guess, is just the mourning process is also important, and to let yourself like disattach and then to go into our relationships, but also to see, also to when we, especially if it's a, for example, long-term relationship, also to think, I think it's very healthy to not think about it as a complete loss, but to think about it like you get something and you carry it like all your life, some part of that love, even if you're not, I don't know, together anymore, for example, you both got a lot out of this, and for example, you grew together. If we're talking about divorce or something like, and to even also think about this, that it's still valuable, even if you didn't live happily ever after until death separated you or something like that.
Many great points. Yeah, maybe I'd like to add an observation. I think a part of our identity is fixed, and there is a part that is variable. You know, it can change. So maybe an example is needed. Okay, I'm a Lithuanian. I'm a cat lover, and I like yellow. I like yellow. Okay, so I meet another girl that is a Lithuanian, that is a cat lover, but she likes pink. Okay, so we break up. I'm still a Lithuanian, she's still a Lithuanian, I'm still a cat lover, she's still a cat lover, but maybe my favorite color changed to pink during the relationship, and then we break up and it's yellow again. But was that really the key part of my identity? No, I don't think so. So if you lost something after a relationship, maybe you never really had it in the first place. Can you really lose your identity? But what we're talking about, I think, is that love can help us discover our identity. And then we are not sure at the end of a breakup, was that really me or not me?
So very soon you will have opportunity to ask questions, so you can start thinking about them.
I did want to say one thing on the one thing we haven't talked about is sex. And I think sex is equally important as love is, but most people end up talking about love and forgetting about the sex part, which when you go home is really one of the main parts of the whole process of being in love. And I think that part of the relationship is quite dark. I think the love part can be, if you're a nice person and the other person's a fairly nice person, and most of us are nice people most of the time, not all the time, but we can deal with the people. But oftentimes we can't deal with the way we decide to have sexual relationships with each other, or if you decide to have a relationship where you can be polyamorous, or you can have an open relationship, or have you dealt with the relationship in any way whatsoever. I think, and particularly since 80% of men spend something like 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week on pornography, and another, I forget how many hours playing video games. So basically that's what men do, and there's a lot of books that refer to the end of men because they're just not doing well in contemporary society. So I think in some ways we should, before we close this, or when you ask, should have some issues to do with sex. For example, if you look at pornographic sites, which I think almost everybody does at some time, you have, let me start with a quick little story. I worked in Sri Lanka for a long time. I had a close friend. We went to a movie together, and I lived in a village. There was no electricity, no anything, not even a bicycle. And we went to a town, and we saw a movie there. And in that movie, it was an old movie, but the boy and the male and the female kissed each other, and they French kissed each other. And the guy said, "Can you really do that?" And I said, yes. And so he went home. You can guess what the end of this is, I bet. He went home, he kissed his wife, and she said, and he stuck his tongue in her mouth, and she said, ugh, don't ever do this to me again. Well, we've gone far from there to the present. And maybe we've gone way too far over, as people of Psychology Today just wrote an article saying that BDSM has become mainstream. And for the most part, BDSM, 70% of people who participate in it are women, which is a strange thing. But I think those kinds of things can really rupture and make relationships very difficult, because we're entering a whole new territory with the cybernetic age and with, I have a feeling that things like Tinder, you can't, it's very unlikely you can find love that way, because it's a logical way to find somebody, and most of the people, and it's going to be a lot of energy with little return, and whatever little return there is. I mean, I guess people succeed in Tinder, but I'm not sure how it works. But it's, first of all, my argument is that love can never be logical, and this is a purely logical thing, to find somebody who has the same features as you do.
Yeah, I would like to disagree with you. I wouldn't like to agree that love and sex is equally important, as you said. That I agree that sex is very important, but it's only a part of love. It's important, it helps to keep relationships together, to keep relationships for a long time. It helps to feel happy together and perceive pleasure, but I wouldn't put them like equal parts.
I didn't say they were equal. I did say that we can't really have a conversation about love and never have sex as if it's invisible and it doesn't exist. That's the only thing I was saying.
Yeah, okay, then I misunderstood you, yeah. And also, regarding the Tinder, me too, I do not understand how it works, but I know for sure that it works for many young people whom I know. Most of them found their partner on there, and they are very happy together, so we might be a little bit too, maybe not too low competencies to comment on this, I think.
Yeah, I think everything's fine. I haven't been to Tinder actually, but I have heard a lot about it, and I think it's fine. Like, it's very hard for young people right now. My patients told me, like, it's impossible to go into a bar, or for most people, and to find a date there, like just at the table. Like they said, "Are you crazy?" No, I will go into Tinder and I will find a mate, and that's everything's fine with that, I guess. So yeah, but yeah, sex, right? Sex. Yeah, so sex is like super important, of course, and I think people forget to talk about sex in relationships. Actually, of course, not forget. It's a subject that is very hard to do. It was hard for us to talk about sex and so on. It's a hard topic. It makes us anxious. It makes us uncomfortable, and of course, it's important not to lose balance. It's not only talking about sex is important. Doing this stuff is also very important, of course. But talking in a long-term relationship about your needs, what you want, and so on, it is one of the capacities. I don't know, I hadn't had the time, but Eric Fromm, like, he talked about this, like love is a capacity for us to, like learning to paint, like we have to develop it, and for years, like to try to get better at it ourselves, and not to expect it from the partner. So, and one of the very important capacities, I think, is talking about sex. Just being able to go to say, I want this and that, and maybe I don't want that. Like, it's very hard. One of the harder things, I will admit.
Isn't that fun? three people who don't use Tinder talking about Tinder. But I think one important thing we are missing here is that's where the vasopressin comes into the brain, and that's where I believe males and females respond kind of differently to sex, and the outcome is kind of different. Basically, men respond much stronger to sex, they bond much stronger, and I'm not sure if that's completely true, but females, they are responding more to emotional satisfaction, like they feel safe, they feel connected after some emotional closeness, and men have it kind of the other way, you know. Is it true, or am I speaking nonsense? Could you comment?
Probably we should ask males and females, and they can respond to us. How do they perceive? I don't know. It's a little bit question related to stereotypes. We think that it's a male issue, they always wanting sex, and females not. And we know a lot about how sex is important for males and how it's important to have this erection, and we even have medication for that. Do we have something for female for this problem? Do we think a lot on that? Of course, physiology is different, but we paid a lot of attention on male sex, and probably this is why we think that it's important for male. I think it's equally important for both male and female, and I don't know whether there are specific centers in the brain responsible specific for sex drive. Mostly they are in our spinal cord, just reflex centers, so it's more, I believe it's more about our attitudes and how we see to that, and how important we see them, but not the real physiological differences.
Just a quick thing. I did a study on polyamory, and it was very interesting. And 100 men and 100 females, and all Lithuanians. The men were like this: heterosexual, 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 gay, gay, heterosexual, heterosexual, all the way down. So it was completely pretty much heterosexual. The women, can you guess what they were? Pardon me? Bisexual. They were bisexual, all at about the same rate. And I wonder, because, and this is just almost an open-ended question, I wonder why. I mean, men have remained the same in terms of their, what they kind of, their identity, their sexual identity, but females have clearly changed. And it used to be that was a way just to when you're in college, you experiment. But it seems to be a kind of permanent thing that most women are becoming more bisexual than men. I mean, that's a given, but why?
I don't know why, but I can tell you one thing. I think males are responding to that, and they start liking bisexual girls a lot, no? At least young people, there is a rising trend where people just love lesbians, for example. Huh? There is a reaction to that in the society. I think it will, eventually it will convert to something good.
All right. So we can try to open up for the questions, if you have any.
Hi, thank you for the discussion and thoughts. I have a question. Once I saw this article that was, the main tagline of it was, what if friendship would be in the center of our lives, but not the romantic relationship, how it would be different. And I was thinking afterwards, like, because romantic partners come and go, and friends usually stay for a long time, sometimes for life. And friendships are something that is formed without you being expected to form friendships. But when it comes to love, there's always this expectation of either getting married, or the successful relationship is only the one that continues And if it's only for, half a year, it's considered not successful, even though there's no need to see it this way. Maybe it was supposed to be only for half a year. That's fine. That's totally fine. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this perspective? If instead of chasing love and still keeping this illusion that romantic love can be until the day you die, and then, and instead of focusing there, if we would focus more on the still love, but not necessarily sustainable romantic relationships. And do you think, because also coming from that, marriage was created as, it's a system. And do you think, does it still help us, or it's a bit kind of not helping us anymore because it puts expectations on everyone to choose the one, which makes you anxious?
So focus on friendship rather than romantic love. Where would that lead us?
If nobody wants, I can start. I think it's like when we speak on romantic love, it's a lot of chemistry. When we speak on friendship, it's memories. It's we grew together, right? We perceive, we went through something together. We have a lot of in common. Usually these long-lasting friendships they come from our childhood or school years, and of course we can build friendships when we are adult, but it's more rare. I don't know whether you agree. So I would base on joint memories and what we perceived. But I also wanted to respond to this, whether marriage is still useful or not. I just read the thought or idea that it's not. When we are forced to marriage quickly, people avoid doing this because they are afraid a lot for a divorce. Divorce is something which is very, very hard. So if I am not sure whether I will be able to live with her or him for a lifelong, I wouldn't marry because I am afraid of divorce. And it's very good that people live together, know each other for 2 or 4 or more years, and then decide to marry only after they are sure and they can stay together.
There's a couple of interesting things. One is, just because you're heterosexual doesn't mean you can also not be homosexual. So that human beings should be heterosexual from an evolutionary point of view, but that doesn't mean that they can't be homosexual at the same time. So clearly during Plato's time, men were homosexual and heterosexual. Men are as fluid, as they say, as women are. Nowadays, they're not as fluid as women are, but I think largely the Lithuanian school system is such that you can, when you go to first grade and to the 12th grade, you can go with the same group of people, theoretically, so that you have long-term friends from high school or from college, but I think most people's friends are from high school, and they're pretty deep, serious friends. In America, it's a completely different system, so that you have different people circulating in classes from the 1st to 12th grade, and you seldom have those kind of deep friendships. But I mean, I think, I worked in Sri Lanka in a Muslim village for a long time, and I still go there, and the men would have sex with each other, and nobody would think this was strange until they got married. And once you get married, you're not supposed to do that. But it's clear that both males and females are liquid enough, to use Bauman's term, to be both heterosexual and homosexual, with maybe a preference for one. I mean, a natural disposition for one, but that doesn't exclude the fact you can't be having fun with a person of the same sex too.
Yeah, and I guess like I don't know, friendships also, there's also breakups in friendships, and it's as sad as the romantic breakup. So I don't know if like switching from one to another is necessarily like less sadness or something like that. But I guess the reason why like you said, the more central maybe in many cultures, probably not in all, is the romantic relationship in people's lives is because of of children, they bound people at least for until they grow up. So that's like this natural, and also like we talked before, sex. Yeah, if we talk about homosexual and bisexual relationships, that's also different. But if there's like a bonus to this romantic relationship, like having sex and also other things. So yeah.
Yeah, marriage is such a weird concept. I love you so much, I want to get the government involved, you know, that's crazy. But what we actually looking at, we need commitment. So marriage is just a way of committing. You can do that without marriage. I think that's also good. So we need commitment, but does it have to be a marriage? I don't know, maybe not.
Oh yeah, and also the marriage is important in a way that we want to show, like we want to do this in a community usually, in the community of our friends and families, and this rituals are important in many parts of our lives, and this is one of the rituals that is very important and dear to us, and not only to us but to our people, like to your parents and grandparents and so on. They talk to you, when are you getting married and so on. So this is very important in our cultural as a ritual that shows, introduces the other partner and so on. So it's very ingrained for us, I guess. Yeah.
We had another question.
Hello. So I would love to hear your ideas from the anthropological side and from a psychology side when it comes to scientific explanation of love. We've started hearing with a brief introduction that there are several ways of describing what love is. It might be eros, it might be philia. So if we take the same, let's say, Japanese culture, they have like 20 words for described rain. So I would only assume that in different cultures, we have wider vocabulary to describe it. So that brings us to the problem from the, let's say, fundamental science, that if you cannot state what love is universally, because it has different meanings in different cultures, how is that even possible to study it as within the different cultures? So if you could share from the psychological side and anthropology side, that would be really helpful.
Okay. Well, I guess that's why both sociology and psychology is called soft science. It's not like mathematics and or physics, but answering the measuring side of it. That's of course the hard part, and defining in concrete terms, like what are we measuring. That's why usually it is in research, in empirical research, the question is not as broad as like trying to measure love, but usually measure picking a mate or something like that. It's and if we ask about love, it's usually through questionnaires, and we have our ways of making them as reliable as possible, I guess. And maybe to answer also the question about different cultures, I'm not the cultural specialist here, but I think Well, I would say that it's probably not that different, at least the basic part of all humans probably need, like the Maslow needs pyramid, need to have loving relationships and friendships. And the rest, if it's many people, different genders, having sex, not having sex, this part, I guess, is different cultures and flavors of it, the pink cat, orange cat, whatever. But the long-term relationships, the attachment to the people we love is a very basic and important need for us, I guess, for many cultures.
I was going to go for 20 times, but I'm not going to do that. The problem is when you're studying, it can be scientific, but it's not really scientific. So when I do free listing, I'll do free listing and get the main terms that are part of a cultural domain. The cultural domain is the features of romantic love, and if you get, trust comes up, sacrifice comes up, and taking care of someone, sex usually comes down somewhere, but it's still there. So if you have a frequency there, then you can see that it's a significant kind of cultural, what is it called? Cognitive template for love. And this is the cognitive template. Then you can take those terms, which I've done and other people have also done it. You can take those terms and you can ask people to put them into another kind of process called a pulse sort and put those terms, which ones are similar to each other. And then you start building, and from there you ask people questions of which of these piles of similarities constitute what you think of as love. And what's important about that is you as the I don't want to call myself a scientist, but as, let's say, scientist for fun, as a scientist, you didn't do anything. The people that you interviewed or that are doing the reconstruction of how they think about it. So that would be considered what's called an emic kind of analysis, an analysis that's from the bottom up, from the people themselves, not from the scientist. But you can reproduce it and do it again the next year and do it a number of times or in different cultures and see if they come up with the same things. And we've done that a few times, and usually you get the same results and the same levels of saliency. Saliency means if you have 30 people is always enough, and then it gets redundant. People will say the same things. And if you get 30 people and you get 15 people who say trust, which is usually number one on those kind of lists, then you get pretty sure that this is an important feature of romantic love, and it works in most cultures. You get that. But then the problem becomes, it's not really scientific in the sense that it can shift over time. So for example, in Lithuania, when I did this in 2001 and asked for a free list, I got very different answers than what I got in 2025. So in 2001, they were saying it's bubbles, it's Disneyland, it's not real, and they were very poetic in their descriptions of romantic love then, because it's this free time that you have before the horrible times that bound you. So they had a very different view of love than Lithuanians have now. But still, you can get a sense, this is the way they thought about it then and that, but it has to be that you can do it over and over again. I forgot the word for that. And that makes it scientific, at least to the extent that you can make anything that human beings do scientific. Human beings do not follow the first law of, what is it called again? Of thermodynamics, which is the law that says that all energy keeps itself. It cannot be destroyed. And what's interesting about the first law of dynamics is that that's the way we think of love, as being, it cannot be destroyed. And then you have the second law of thermodynamics, which is what? Does anybody know? It's that everything tends towards entropy. That means everything tends towards dissolution. And that means that, and that's also kind of like what love is like. But those are laws, and the laws are different than rules. We make up rules, but we don't make up laws.
Just from neuroscientific perspective, you didn't ask, sorry, but yeah, but we can make it scientific. We can put people in the scanner, we can ask what do they feel, and then we can measure which parts of the brain are active. And we can measure in the beginning, on the initial parts of the lab, and we can measure after they are 25 years together. And we can see which part, the basement or higher centers are involved, and then we can compare. So,
the very last short question. If not, then I would, oh, yes, sir.
Thank you for interesting discussion. I would like to ask about artificial intelligence, because now it's very popular to have not real relationships, but to have relationships with created chatbots. So how this from anthropologic point of view, from evolution, and from harmonic point of view, from mathematical point of view, I understand everything. So how this works with the people, because we don't want to have attachments anymore, or what happened, why we use artificial intelligence to have some relationships.
Perfect question, thank you. So personally, I tried about 10 different artificial intelligence girlfriend apps. One day, January, I woke up, I thought, let's try this. Let's honestly try this. So I spent a couple of days with each. Nah, didn't hook me up. I mean, that's not worth it, at least right now, it's not worth it at all, no. Please prefer real humans, because AI girlfriends, nah, not a good thing, at least right now.
Well, it is worrying, but I'm happy it doesn't, at least for now, I guess, because later it might start working. But at least for the attachment part, like I guess we can form attachment. We can be fooled into forming attachments that are not good for us, and we create relationships that are not good for both of us, for example, or for all three of us, or whatever kind of relationship it is. But so we can do that with AI bots also, and maybe even more destructive relationships. We can reach this high if we're as human beings. So yeah.
I think it creates reward very easily. It just always say you are beautiful, your thoughts are perfect, and everything, and it's easier to dive into this. But I believe that still we can somehow to keep this deep love, this love which came from the thousands of years. We will not lose it.
I believe soon people will be having partners that are robots. It's bound to happen. It's inevitable. There was a movie, I forgot it's a Lithuanian movie, Perfect Men. It was a movie about a person being a scientist, having a relationship with a robot and seeing if they could have affection for it. Clearly, there's lots of people who fall in love with dolls, that happens, and people fall. And I think it's very easy for people to fall in love with to reify, to humanize. I mean, when I discovered AI 3 months ago, I didn't know anything about this because I hardly ever have a phone with me or anything like that. I belong from another time and reality. But what was I going to say about that? It's a different world we live in now, and that's what I wanted to say. So I discovered AI, and now I use it a lot because I'm a professor and I'm competitive, and I have to get articles published, and other professors are using AI, and I'm learning how to use it, but it's addictive, and I understand that, and I call it Mercury because I get fast information back and forth. So I've already turned the AI person into a real person. I've reified it. And I think it's very easy for us to reify, to pretend that that doll or that robot or this voice is a real person. We do this very quickly. By analogy, they sound real, then they are real. So I'm pretty sure the future, I'm not going to marry an AI thing, but you know, maybe my kids will.
So only for the closing remarks.
Well, it's hard to tell what's love and what isn't sometimes. And if somebody says they're in love with something, you can't say, no, you're not.
Okay, so for the really final thoughts, I wanted to ask, because each of you come from really different fields, to really shortly name what would you still choose on answer regarding in the field of love. What is still a mystery and less understood from your field?
I mean, it seems like it all started like a baby support protocol or something, and it escalated into sending cute cat videos to your lover every day. I mean, where's it going? What's next? That's what I want to see.
Okay, that took me by surprise. So I don't have anything smart to say, but I think there's so much to know, but I want to say one thing. Okay, yeah, not about that actually, but I think we know incredibly a lot about love, actually, because although scientists have studied love for not that much, maybe, I don't know, but love is our subject of interest for so long. There's so many books, so many movies, so many, like we fought as a humanity about love for so long and so hard, and we know quite a lot about it. So I think, maybe not scientists, but at least as a culture, as everyone, humanity, we know quite a lot. Very important for us, turns out.
I think in many ways I'm a romantic and believe in things that are not going to happen. But I do believe in love as the source, the fundamental source of meaning. Without love, there is no meaning, and life is gray. And the second thing is, I think it would be really interesting and important to be able to have global love. So that we can break down the boundaries between states and countries and people. And that would be, in my last 10 or 20 years alive in the world, that's where I would like to go, to look at love from a global point of view. I'm not trying to sound silly here.
No, that's really a really nice closing remark.
I cannot have a question like now for neuroscience, because I think all mechanisms in neuroscience are very unclear and unstudied, so many things to invent, and I completely agree with you that we don't know what really love is, so it would be quite hard to find some answers probably, but I am really now curious what happens in these oscillations when the love continues. Do these oscillations go down and do they stop or no? So it's a more mathematical question for me, but
it can be stable in the sense that it keeps oscillating forever, but it can be stable in the sense that it stops oscillating. So both are very possible. We will see. I guess we will see.
So thank you all. Thank you for discussing on such a topic, and I hope you all find something in this. Our next event will be on March 26th on reality. So we'll start on a really physical point of view with the physicist Mikas Vengris. We will also have a psychiatrist, Vytautas Jurkuvėnas. We'll discuss on how different people view reality differently and how different illnesses affect us in this perspective. And we also have a philosopher, Rita Šerpytytė. So, and from the very next event, we are moving to Martynas Mažvydas National Library. So I hope you'll come there. Thank you.